Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button, hit the like, all of that good stuff. A quick final thoughts video in regards to Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin. Now this video is mainly going to be looking at things from the Dillian Whyte perspective. Obviously Dillian Whyte in this fight got knocked out in the 5th round. It was a fight in which he was having a fair bit of success. He was winning. Obviously, he dropped Povetkin twice in round 4, so Dillian Whyte was in charge, but he ended up getting knocked out. Is this the end for Dillian Whyte? Will this drastically affect his career, his performances going forwards? Or can he successfully rebound and, cement himself again as a top 5 heavyweight? Now, before I get into this, I would like to make something clear. Obviously, my 2 post-fight videos since this fight, I think some people might have got the impression that I dislike Dillian Whyte, and I'm happy he lost. To tell you the truth, in the past sort of 10 years or so, I can count maybe on one hand the times when I've been actively happy that a fighter's lost. Dillian Whyte isn't really one of those occasions, I've got to say. As an individual, I've got no problem with Dillian Whyte. In fact, I quite like the guy. My only problem with this whole Dillian Whyte thing was, his fan base, how that WBC story was covered, how Dillian Whyte's career was covered in general. I just felt there was a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies being told, and, the guy, in my opinion, has one of the most deluded fan bases in the sport of boxing. The whole fanboy side of things and the way Dillian Whyte's career has been covered has kind of got my back up. And, that's really what that was all about, personally. But, I've got no real problem with Dillian Whyte. I still think he's a solid fighter. He's certainly a top 10 heavyweight. And, the guy's given me some good entertainment in the past few years. So I don't really have a problem with Dillian Whyte per se. Now, can Dillian improve from this fight? I believe so. The result of this fight really didn't surprise me. I mentioned in my betting video that Dillian Whyte's a guy who has had numerous hard fights in his career where the same flaws are being exposed time and time again. The guy's been hurt on multiple occasions. The guy makes the same mistakes on multiple occasions, lapses in concentration, etc., etc. To me, what we saw against Alexander Povetkin was the same Dillian Whyte that we've always seen. Just this occasion, when he got caught, he really had to pay the price, In these other fights with the likes of Joseph Parker, Derek Chisora, Oscar Rivas, he soldiered through and he got away with it. Eventually your luck will run out and somebody will expose those weaknesses in your game. And essentially that's what Alexander Povetkin did. But going into a potential second fight, which looks like it's going to happen, apparently there's a rematch clause, so it looks like we will get a second fight. Going into that second fight, would I rule Dillian Whyte out of winning that rematch? Absolutely not. When we look at the fight as a whole, the first fight, both guys were having success. I do have to say, I think the Sky commentary team weren't giving Povetkin enough credit for what he was doing, particularly in round 1. But in this fight, Dillian Whyte certainly had some good success. Let's talk about the jab first, right? The jab was a mixed bag in my opinion. When Dillian Whyte was stepping forwards and firing that jab with authority, I felt that jab was looking really good. He was rocking Povetkin's head back, he was pushing Povetkin back, and he was basically neutralising him on the front foot. When you back Povetkin up and don't hold your feet when you're consistently coming forwards, you can make Povetkin redundant or more redundant as a puncher. We saw that in the Marco Huck fight. When Marco Huck was applying pressure, getting on Povetkin's chest, Povetkin really wasn't having all that much success. Povetkin was having success when Marco Huck held his feet and started to trade. He just held his feet and started swinging away. That's when Povetkin was having success. But when Huck was pushing forwards, pushing Povetkin back, Povetkin was nowhere near as effective. I think we saw that in this fight. When Dillian was more authoritative, when he was using that jab to walk Povetkin down, push him back, Dillian was actually doing some pretty good work. He was coming forwards behind a nice tight high guard. He was catching Povetkin's overhand right with his glove. So that was good. But again, man, the lapses in concentration, is really what cost Dillian. Holding your feet and obviously getting caught with that big left uppercut. You know, silly mistakes, and you know, that can result in a knockout loss. That's what happened. You know, Dillian was doing some good things, man. He dropped Povetkin twice. We know he's got the power to hurt Povetkin going into a second fight. You know, to me, despite this result, and despite, you know, the nature of the victory, a great victory for Povetkin, we still have to look at the fight for what it was. I know knockouts cause amnesia, but to me, Povetkin still looked like an old man. He looked like a guy who was faded, a guy who was well past his best. So, listen, as good as this win was for Povetkin, going into a rematch, I certainly wouldn't rule Dillian Whyte out. I think he had enough success in the first fight to, you know, give me a realistic thought that he could win this second fight. But obviously, he just needs to cut out on those silly mistakes. That's going to be hard for Dillian Whyte because, you know, he makes these mistakes every single fight. But, you know, there was enough in that first fight, if I was Dillian Whyte, to give me confidence that I can go back and right that wrong. Going into a second fight, I would say that Dillian maybe needs to, you know, really seriously look at his training regime, who he's got training him, etc. I know it's very reactionary, but something didn't seem right in the build up to this fight with Xavier Miller bringing Dave Coldwell last minute. Something didn't seem right in that whole camp. So maybe Dillian needs to look at that side of things and really kind of work out who he needs, who he doesn't need, and go from there. But yeah, in a second fight, I certainly believe Dillian can win, but, you know, he just needs to get it. He needs to be tighter this time around, you know. He needs to be cautious of what's coming back. I think he got gassed after that fourth round. Not gassed as in physically, but his head went, you know, his confidence got too high, and he thought he could blast Povetkin out of there, and he got knocked out, you know. I think he can learn from that. I think he can bring his physicality to the table in the rematch, along with some good defensive adjustments, you know, basic defensive adjustments, a better jab, and I think he can beat Povetkin in the rematch, I have to say. But obviously going into that rematch, the pressure will be on, and that same danger element will be there. So a rematch, obviously, despite me saying Dillian can win, is still a very hard fight, given what's gone on in the first fight. Psychologically, to rebound from that, you know, takes a strong fighter to do so. I think Dillian is strong, so I certainly think he's got a chance. And yeah, don't mistake my last two videos on this fight to say I'm writing off Dillian Whyte or I hate the guy. I don't hate the guy, you know. Again, I still believe the guy's a top 10 heavyweight. I think he's a decent fighter. He's a flawed fighter, you know. A lot of people out there severely overrated him, but he's still a good fighter. And, you know, basic adjustments maybe could see him winning a potential rematch with Povetkin. Mentally rebounding from this could be the real question. What's his confidence like? Is he, you know, there's a lot to consider, but a rematch with Povetkin is certainly winnable. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, you know. It would be a hard ask, given what's gone on first time around, but it's possible. I think in the build-up to this fight with Povetkin, the first fight, I think Dillian Whyte made a lot of mistakes. I alluded to this in a couple of my previews for this fight. You know, Dillian Whyte's attitude leading into this Povetkin fight was all wrong, as far as I'm concerned. So many distractions, from trainers to the WBC situation, to back and forths with the likes of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. Dillian Whyte was making a lot of noise. His team were making a lot of noise. His fans were making a lot of noise. But nobody was talking about Povetkin. I said, are these guys, I asked the question, are these guys overlooking Povetkin? And I think that was a realistic possibility in this circumstance. I really do. I got the impression of that in the build-up. The videos are out there. And that's how I feel now. I really do. So, in my opinion, the biggest disappointment, if I was a Dillian Whyte fan, would be the lack of professionalism that he showed in the build-up to this fight, and the lack of respect that he showed to Povetkin in the build-up to this fight. You know, that would be my main concern, or my main gripe with Dillian Whyte. Yeah, he needs to improve a lot technically. The guy makes a lot of mistakes. And in that rematch, listen, we can say Dillian Whyte needs to do this, he needs to do that, but he's not the most natural boxer. He's always going to make mistakes, but he needs to minimise the amount of mistakes that he does make. It was far too easy for Alexander Povetkin to work his way inside on Dillian. Far too easy. And this is a guy, yeah, whose legs are nowhere near as quick as they once were, whose head movement isn't as pronounced as it once was, his hand speed's not what it was, and Povetkin was still easily able to get inside. You know? And even when Povetkin got inside, he wasn't doing anything special like he used to do. He was getting caught a lot more at mid-range and on the inside than he used to do. Dillian was catching him quite regularly, and that was because, you know, Povetkin wasn't taking his head off centre line. He wasn't coming in at angles. You know, Povetkin looked like an old fighter, to be honest. There were moments of real quality, obviously the knockout being one, but you could tell Povetkin isn't the fighter that he once was. So for him to close the distance like that on Dillian and get on the inside as effectively or as often as he did, you know, that is a big concern for me for Dillian Whyte. You know, that really kind of makes me question his boxing IQ, his ring generalship, and his distance control. You know, Dillian Whyte needs to do a much better job in a potential rematch of managing that range. You can apply pressure behind a jab. You can apply pressure on the outside. You really can. Dillian Whyte does have a good jab when he really commits to it, throws it out there with authority, and quickly brings it back. He does have a good jab, but the thing is with Dillian, his jab is so inconsistent. Sometimes he'll throw a great jab, and sometimes he'll throw these lazy-ass jabs in which Povetkin can easily slip, get on the inside and work. You know, Dillian Whyte at times looks very lethargic, and he looks very lazy in his movements, and Povetkin was able to expose that, unlike no other opponent. So, listen, Povetkin stylistically is always going to be a problem for Dillian Whyte, even this old version. So Dillian Whyte really needs to improve in that next fight. Can he do it? Yes. Would I rule him out? No. Is it a big ask? Also, it is, yeah. Going into this potential rematch, I would say it's a 50-50 fight, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm not ruling out Dillian Whyte. But yeah, a lot to really work on, a lot to think about. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. I really wanted to make this video, you know, just really, I guess out of fairness, because maybe some people out there are thinking I'm a Dillian Whyte hater, you know, all that nonsense, all that fanboy drivel, which is based on nothing. That second video I made post-fight was purely based on facts. But you know, people out there, you know, they'll use that hater term willy-nilly. Oh, you're a hater. You don't like Dillian Whyte. I just don't like the bullshit that comes along with him, and I don't like his fanboys. But that aside, is Dillian still a good fighter? Yes. Is he still top 10? Yes. In my opinion, can he beat Povetkin in the rematch? Yes. So I'm not ruling him out. I'm still considering him as a top contender. But, you know, needs to go back to the drawing board. We'll see how he responds. Anyway, share your thoughts below. What did you make of this video? Peace.